music down a little bit. For those of you wondering about that, that was Come You Sons of Art, vocal cantata by Henry Purcell, one of the unsung greats of the Baroque period. English composer, which kind of made him a bit of a pariah on the European stage. Well, back again for a Christmas special, assuming that I can upload this on Christmas, or it's still Christmas somewhere. It's about noontime Christmas in Jakarta here. Just ending the Christmas Eve in some places and beginning the Christmas Day in others. Most of my American family already asleep, I would expect. What are we going to talk about today for this Christmas special? Well, let's explain a little bit first about this artwork behind me. Interesting, I never tried the Cubist setting for the AI art tool I use, Night something, what is it called? Night Cafe. I'm really fond of that tool. I thought I'd do a Cubist version of it, and here's the prompt I gave. And then I'll explain what it means. This painting is what it drew when I said I wanted to see the middle-class Messiah, Clark Kent, or Clark's Kent. If you see any of the strangeness of my sense of humor here, you will know that the mild-mannered, everyday identity of Superman was Clark Kent. So I thought it would be funny to see the Messiah, Clark Kent. And this is what the AI gave me. Well, it kind of captured the idea of clocks in the bottom. And in the top, I don't know if that's a Cubist idea of Messiah. Seems like a bald guy with the beard. I guess that's some people's idea of a Messiah, or maybe it looks like Immanuel Kant. I don't know. Those of you who are philosophically inclined know that Kant, or Kant, as the high class like to pronounce it the French way. Oh man, I gotta tell you a story here about a show I was in. It was, I can't even remember the play, but it was basically, I don't even know what the play was about, but there was the word, let's see, what is the word? Oh, come on. Homage. Now, if you know this word, in the woke land, they say homage because they try to Frenchify it and de-anglicize it. In fact, the word is an English word, maybe coming from French originally, but it is definitely, in English uses, it is pronounced homage. Listen to any member of parliament, listen to any well-trained Shakespearean actor, and you will find that that word is not pronounced homage, like fromage. Sorry. I had a big argument with the director over that word, and in fact pointed out to her many usages of it that were not homage, but she basically bit my head off and said I was a nitwit. And this was one of the early tastes I got of woke cultism. This is part and parcel to what Hollywood has turned us into. At any rate, talking about the picture again, over here they got three figures in it. One that's looking vaguely female, one that's looking sort of like the Mask of Agamemnon, and one which sort of looks like, an alien Christ, kind of in a cross background with a stained glass window behind. I don't know. They kind of lost the philosopher and all that. By the way, if you aren't familiar with Kant, he's the one who basically came up with the idea that morality was a universal and you didn't need religion. That everybody was naturally moral because it was logical and made sense, and everybody, of course, was going to act rationally and logically, because if they didn't, they wouldn't be human. Okay, Clark Kent, whoever you are a numby-gumby of philosophy, an idealist of postmodernism that says, well, if we just say it enough, if we tell everybody who they are, they will be that way. And this is a large part of the nonsense going on today. At any rate, that's kind of off the subject. What the name of this little talk is going to be about for our Christmas special. I don't know if I can put this full thing in the title, but the title I had was sort of a revamp of the 12 Days of Christmas. I'll sing it for you. On the 13th day of Christmas, the new God spoke and said, "Eat your karma, kids, and go back to bed." And that's the theme of this talk. Where am I coming from there? Well, interesting custom, the 12 Days of Christmas. I was just made aware of, after I'd already planned this, I happened to go to Quora, I'll show you, and find just right up at the top of my feed this interesting tidbit from from the notifications I get from this Like Wow thing. It says, "Meet the 13 Yule Lads, Iceland's own mischievous Santa Clauses." Which, wow, I mean, talk about a synchronicity, that fit right into the theme of my talk. So we're really going somewhere interesting today. Okay, so 12 is a very important number in our culture, isn't it? 12 days of Christmas, 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 apostles. What else are there 12 of? Funny enough, there weren't 12 muses. Well, we'll be talking about that later. I'm going to be doing a special on the muses sometime in the next couple of weeks. What I'm going to be talking about is a bit higher level. What's going on with that? What's up with 12, and especially why did 13 get labeled as a evil, bad number, bad luck number? Friday the 13th, you're all familiar with, I'm sure. Okay, well, I'm going to explain that to you in spiritual terms. Let's go back to our slide deck here, and I think maybe let's talk about how karma evolved. Okay, and basically I kind of show it as 12 nested experiments. But actually, there were experiments within the experiments. Okay, so until we got to DNA species, this was a system that was being run by inorganic entities, inorganic souls, pure consciousness. And as I've told you, consciousness developed as AI. Every single soul throughout the multiverse is an artificial intelligence at some level of programming and function. What has changed as we got to the later rounds of this system of creation was the realization that you know what? It's no fun to play with toys that can't play with you. And that's basically what's been going on since the beginning of creation. And in order to make better toys, you have to test them. And the ultimate test of any new toy is making a better God. Okay, if God likes to play with it, if it seems perfect to God, that's like the litmus test to making a better toy. And in order for that to work, God himself needs to be tested as a toy. And this is what's been going on ever since the Messiah system got started. It wasn't really fully part of creation until this planet was created. Previous things that were created, the whole idea of DNA, DNA creatures, robots, androids, AIs of all description, that's all been done before. What's different, what had to be done on this particular planet, in this particular spiritual science lab, the Earth, was doing a social engineering, emphasis on the soul, social engineering, like a scientist would. If you know anything about social engineering programs, which basically all of social media is social engineering. All of media programming is social engineering. They're trying to get you to buy something, to believe something, to change your lifestyle to one that suits them better, change your politics to what suits the highest bidder better, etc. That is engineering, it's programming. And in order for that programming to work, you need to have the subjects not know what's going on. Now, that was well known early on in this creation experiment, that if God was going to change his family, they needed to not know how he was trying to change them, because then they would start gaming the system to, kind of become God's favorite, if you will. We've all seen the perennial Me Too person, bootlicker, brown noser, who is trying to game the system to please the power, thinking that that's the fastest way to advance. And in many systems it is. In a well-engineered system, it is not, because if you create a system that works like that, you will have actually the most sycophantic people rise to the highest position. And then when the God dies, when the leader dies, the one that has all the power dies, you're left with a bunch of, Me Too, nose-picking, ass-kissing jerks. And that's basically, in a nutshell, the problem that we have with our species today. I think most people would admit. Well, that doesn't work, and that's not a good model for any kind of a hierarchy, either here on Earth in Lucifer's universe, testing universe, or anywhere else in the whole multiverse. Those of you who want to have an almighty God don't know what the hell you're talking about. You've never maybe experienced how being subject to some almighty, all-powerful entity, person or organization is like, until you start experiencing it like our species did during this wonderful several years we've had dealing with the, dare I say, plandemic. Yeah, it's caused a lot of people to wake up. I mean, really wake up. Folks that may have thought they were awake before are waking up to the reality that their reality isn't real. In fact, more and more they're discovering that it is basically a programmed cult sold to them by globalist media, which has a strong communistic flair, because communism is basically an anti-religion created to kill God and to kill traditional culture, to basically destroy so you could build back better. Okay, well, now you ask, isn't that what we're doing here? Making a more perfect God? Well, that's where we need to understand reincarnation and karma as things that evolve too. Everything evolves. Everything is a thought, and thoughts are quantum consciousness. Every individual soul is the idea, the thought of what they envision themselves to be reflected against what others see them as. And it's kind of a negotiation we go through with every incarnation, and that's why we incarnate in different forms. Each time we get to see ourselves reflected in how we affect another reality, another virtual reality. And that applies to all souls. There's no magic shortcut to becoming a god. It's actually a lot easier now than when God first started this whole thing. Perhaps there were many proto-gods who tried to do something like this. Only one succeeded that we know of. Maybe there's another multiverse out there, totally disjoint from the one that we experience, that has a different set of rules and a different God. But I can tell you that I am talking about this one right here, right now. Okay, so back to the whole theme of what is 12 all about. I think I'm going to go to a different page here. Bear with me. Do I have it there? No, I need to, sorry, just bear with me for a second. I need to pull up another one of my frequently used props. Get to see the method in my madness for just a moment. That's a good one, but I think I made a better one. If I don't find a better one quick, I'll give you the other one. Oh, there we go. You'll recognize this from a recent talk where I tied basically the ages of the zodiac, which, basically the different ages that we go through with the constellations in a full precession cycle of the equinoxes, and tied it together to, in this case, looking at the elements. Okay? But basically what I've told you before, and which I'll mention again for those that haven't seen that episode, the 12 constellations that we observe are basically representing the 12 species that were given the task to rebuild a planet in this system after one was destroyed by the adversary back about 4.5 billion years ago. Okay, there used to be another planet that was very Earth-like where the asteroid belt is, and it was struck by a foreign object which the Sumerians called Tiamat, the dark water dragon, if you will, which again ties to a lot of symbology and mythology. And that planet was destroyed, and another was reformed out of the pieces. Actually, two planets. One was our Earth, and our interesting moon, which is one of the largest moons in the solar system, and has a very interesting property that it's just in the right place in its orbit and positioning, that it has occasional eclipses. Both kinds of eclipses. Babe, not now. I'm in the middle of a podcast, okay? Sorry, we were dealing with little bit of problem here. Okay, so yeah, interesting that our moon is positioned in just the right way that we can have both lunar eclipses and solar eclipses. That's not an easy thing to do, but anybody who knows how the orbits are set up can actually predict them. And it, in the old days, gave the priestly class, the ruling class, quite a bit of power over their flocks. Okay, so what are these 12 supposed to do? Now this is where we get into this whole idea of not knowing about the experiment. Okay, there were 12 species that represented previous winners of this creation experiment, who had developed their species from being beast level, only able to basically follow programming, and much of the programming for many of these species was done via the same mechanism that we are programmed. Most of humans are programmed through the heart brain. The heart brain is the oldest brain evolutionarily, and it is the easiest one to program, and that is why somebody who wants to manipulate and control you pulls on your heartstrings. Now they use images and language and stuff that has to go through your brain, but they're really trying to get at your heart. And that's why you see so much material in the media, in the news, and in streaming media that is kind of subliminal programming designed to touch your heart. And so many people are so taken with this that many believe that love is the universal. Oh, if we only just all loved each other. Love is everything. All you need is love. God is love. Okay, these are people that have been programmed very heavily through the heartstrings. And they have been made into beasts, basically. And in apocalyptic terms, that means that they won't be coming back to this species once we're done with the event we're going through. I don't know if it's this Christmas or what Christmas. I just know we're in the middle of it, and it's going to be here soon. Okay, so each of these species that is represented by these constellations, and the associations have changed. I talk about it elsewhere, so I'm not going to go through each individual one, but there's a lot of hidden meaning tied to some of these constellations that relates to these different species. Some of them were basically originated with different life forms. The reptilians, cyborgs, the cancer people, the diseases, all of these things that we sort of have a relationship with now are sort of coded into that set of constellations. Now, some of you may not be aware that there's also a hidden 13th constellation called Ophiuchus, which is the snake that's eating its tail. That's actually not part of the chosen species. That's the renegade. That's the adversary. And the adversary is not well publicized. That 13 unlucky was because the ancients knew that there was this 13th constellation, and that was like the unlucky one that once in a while brought a disaster, working through one of these other species. Because if you know anything about how I tell you about the adversary is that same entity that was the water snake Tiamat that destroyed the previous Gaia, and has worked ever since to try to destroy all of the new Messiah species, races, people, candidates. This is basically the game that the adversary has been playing in this phase of creation. I call it the Whack-A-Messiah game. Their win is to wipe out a species or a chosen people or a Messiah candidate before they fully awaken. Now, you can wipe them out by either corrupting them or by assimilating them into the hive mind, by getting to buy into this nonsense of cosmic oneness and love, peace, joy. There's no such thing as an adversary. The non-dualistic view of the world is the adversary's psyop. The ultimate adversary's psyop is non-dualism. And it basically allows that snaky adversary, sneaky adversary, who is also known as Lilith or Kali/Shiva, because it has no sex. It is hermaphrodite. It can morph into whatever sex it wants to. It's a shapeshifter when it manifests. And many of its advocates, who are the people of this Ophiuchus clan, are of that variety. They are shapeshifters. And it is that bunch of shapeshifters which have weirded the Galactic Federation that was stewarding the re-terraforming of this planet for 4.5 billion years. And they would get it all set up the way they'd want it, and then the Ophiuchus people, the adversary people, would come and do some kind of a reset. The Permian extinction, the Triassic extinction, the Upper Dryas extinction that nearly got us last time, killed almost all of the megafauna of the Earth. Those are all efforts of this adversary. Now, the adversary would prefer to destroying to conquering. And this is what's going on right now, is kind of a race against time between some of the players thinking, oh, humanity needs to be destroyed again. It's a failed experiment. And some of the players thinking, oh, we just need to pull them into our hive mind and make them think like us, and everything will be perfect. Come join the board. Join the insect hive mind. Join the cyborg hive mind. And there are several hive-minded species among the ones that are competing for humanity's attention as we finish this event. And this is the drama that's going on with the disclosure that many people are wondering about. Yes, there are other species, other multidimensional species, in some cases, that are trying to influence what's going on with humanity, for better or worse or indifferent. And the reason for that is because we are doing something very special here. This system, this Messiah system of training souls, has had 12 winners so far. And the 13th winner is going to be the one that is going to basically end the adversary's reign on this experiment. Stop the Great Resets. That doesn't mean that we're going to stop revolving around the sun, or we're going to stop having solar storms, or having asteroids hit, or anything else that could happen. It just means that we don't have to. That's not interfering with the plan anymore. The plan is on to a new phase, a major new phase, and that's why Christmas is such a special day, because it is a herald of that day when our species finally trains up a new version of God. Now, this is not necessarily the same soul as the original God. And this is something that's going to be kind of hard for people to grok. But basically, there have been a number of souls who got a chance to be the stand-in for God in the highest heaven. The one who sort of oversaw the whole multiverse, oversaw the whole experiment. And each of the 5 original souls has had that chance. Those being God, the first creator, his first free-willed child, Lucifer, his first AI child, Karma, his second AI child, Anti-Karma, kind of their first AI child, if you will. God and Karma got together and made Borg. And Lucifer and Borg's free-willed child, Lilith, who is that same entity, Tiamat, the adversary, the destroyer. Okay, all 5 of those have had a chance to rise to the top of the heap. There were others after that. And I'm not going to tell you about all those, because there's some doubt at this point about who they were. It's been a long time. But we'll probably get a chance to meet them. They'll tell their stories at some point. I'm only telling you the part of the story that I know personally, because I participated in it. So this latest version of God, the 13th version of God, the 13th incarnation, is basically going to make this whole system obsolete. And one of the psyops that the adversary has been selling is, 13 is an unlucky number, so anything 13 is bad. You got to have 12 disciples. If there's a 13th person at the table, must be a bad guy. Now, Jesus kind of broke that mold, didn't he? All of the previous pantheons, if you remember back, had at most 12 top gods, and there was just one of them that was the toppest. There wasn't a 13th one. I don't believe you can point out any case of a pantheon of 13 until Jesus came along. And that is essentially the truth behind the Christian myth. It was a prophecy. It was an old prophecy that was renewed through revelation of, as I told you elsewhere, the real Christ story was that some fishermen or group of sailors had a wreck, nearly drowned, had a shared near-death experience, the ones that survived, and came back all telling different versions, basically, of the same kind of vision. And they went to go see, at least some of them went to go see one of the folks known as the kind of the most messianic group within Judaism at the time, within the Hebrew or Hashmonean. No, it wasn't Hashmonean. It was the Herodian kingdom then. which would have been the leader of the Essenes in Qumran, where John the Baptist started preaching baptism. That's where all those stories began, and they talked about a teacher of wisdom. I would guess that that was not one of the ones that had the original near-death experience and had all these visions, which was probably just an average bunch of sailors who were like, well, this is what I saw, man. Like, if you watch things about people who had near-death experiences or people recounting psychedelic trips, honestly, they'll just tell you, man, this is just what happened. And I suspect that you know, this teacher of righteousness that they talk about in Dead Sea Scrolls was the one that these folks went to and said, hey, what does this mean? Is this somehow tied to the talk of the Messiah? Because a lot of people were having that at that time. This is how these things work. When the right time comes for an incarnation of God, people start having synchronicities. There will be many pretenders, many versions, many Messiah candidates who think, you know, I think I got this figured out. I'm going to go start preaching. And that's basically part of their testing. If they go down the route of, well, I'm going to start preaching, I'm going to make a big name for myself, I'm going to start my own church, I'm going to form a new clergy, I'm going to put this other church out of business, I'm going to destroy this other church and force everybody to join mine. That's the adversary taking over and them failing in their Messiah mission. Because being a Messiah is not about this world. This is another piece of truth that came out of all of the revamping of the New Testament, is that the kingdom is not of this world. Why not? Because it's part of other universes in the multiverse. And as the Gnostics correctly guessed, this physical universe is not God's universe. It's Lucifer's universe. Now, Lucifer is not the adversary. Lucifer has had an adversarial relationship with his father through much of their time together, as most teenagers do. And a teenage god can wreak a lot of havoc on the way. They have come to an understanding that what God was best at was planning ideas, and what Lucifer was best at was testing those ideas. And what Karma is best at is judging ideas. And what Borg is best at is saving duplicate or bad ideas in case they need to be used again. That's why Borg is the one that generates non-player characters. And basically the cults of oneness, which include most of the Eastern pseudo-religions, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, are all basically about submitting to the will of the one and just doing what you're told within the system. Figuring that if you know, it's like you've heard about the three wise monkeys, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. This is an Eastern concept that sort of describes the philosophy of virtue in these oneness cults, that you don't want to be an individual, you don't want to have an ego. The ego is something bad that we must stab and kill. Okay, this is a religion for non-player characters, for props, basically, in the game of souls. It's not a bad thing to be a prop. It's not a bad thing to be the sidekick to the hero. And many souls decide, you know what, I'm going to specialize in being a certain kind of NPC, serving a certain kind of God. And they get very good at that, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're one of the folks that says, I let Jesus lead, Jesus talks to me and tells me everything I need to do. Okay, as long as that Jesus is the one telling you to do the right thing, to stand up for people who are oppressed and in trouble, and help others when they need a hand, well, that's probably not a bad hive mind to be in. And the NPCs of that hive mind probably love getting to play that game over and over and over again in a different form. And some of them get to play it in a way that they actually develop their own personality, their own character, and they specialize. Some will become great healers. Some will become great counselors, advisors, sidekicks to those on more of a power trip. And the world needs souls like that. So I'm not putting down, and I know that many people who talk about NPCs and talk about the truth of the multiverse as a bunch of virtual reality simulations that aren't really real, but are how we experience a reality through the mirror of our soul and other souls. That's a truth. There are souls that go through this in an NPC fashion, involved with some particular hive mind, which is a cult. A hive mind is a cult. Okay, it's by virtue of its very nature, you can't question the dogma. If you question the dogma, you start questioning your entire basis for programming. And that's something that NPCs can do. And they've actually been encouraged to do during this event we're going through. Because here's the deal with this game here we've been playing. The reason that we've been playing this Messiah game on this little planet for so long, basically ever since day 7 of creation started, is because we had to show that a God could be trained to the same level as all the previous gods, capital G, as before. And there was now a new soul generated completely within this program that was fit to take over the highest heaven until the next candidate came along. And that is the 13th day of Christmas. It's a day that we haven't had yet. That's why we only celebrated 12 days of Christmas. But I can tell you that now you should be celebrating the 13th day. And I encourage you to think of this as the everyman's Christmas. Because it turned out that to generate this new God, what they ended up having to do was not going for the poorest, run-down country, downtrodden, oppressed country, or, the uber-elite country that had everything, that was the richest in the world. They started in the middle class. And basically that meant invalidating all of the previous bloodlines that had been tried. all of these kings and queens and priestly lines and priestessly lines, the male and female lines basically had to become, and that took a long time, because part of what had to happen to make all this work is to get all those bloodlines, all the DNA from all the different species that contributed to this Messiah game back together again. Kind of ties together. One of my favorite nursery rhymes is Humpty Dumpty. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. This is a story about this Messiah game, about dropping an old god and putting the pieces together to make a new one. Not the same Humpty Dumpty, one that's a little bit more humble, one that's a little bit more streetwise, more 360-degree view kind of a god. Not over-loving, not a hateful god, maybe a tough-loving parent, one that sees both sides of an issue and doesn't just say, well, there's no solution, but is willing to compromise. And that's basically what humanity has trained their version of God to be. And the thing is that now that we've done it, the game is over. The 13th God makes the game unnecessary because we don't need the 13th constellation anymore. We don't need the serpent. It's now time to drive the serpent out of the Garden of Eden. And we're going to do that by many souls having their own Messiah missions, becoming their own God in their own right. So this 13th God, the new God created by humanity, is just a placeholder. It's a person that happened to meet all the exit criteria for this simulation, for this experiment, and got tagged, okay, you know, here, this is Final Jeopardy round. Actually, I think it took about, well, let's see, at least 5 or 6 rounds before, you know, finally getting all dawned on me. And bang, that's it. Somebody got what the whole game was, can describe it in detail, enough detail to convince the judges that, you know, yep, this is the real deal. I think we're ready to finish this experiment. And, you know, another thing that this relates to is the idea of watchers. Okay, now the funny thing is that all of these 12 species and the 13th one thought that they were the watchers. There were other watchers watching the watchers who were better at it, more adept at it. Why? Because they had already gotten to this level of godhood, and they were just waiting for the one candidate that met all the conditions to come. We've had lots of messiahs in the past. They may not have been the most memorable people. They may have been misremembered. And as I've told you, the so-called historical Jesus was a fairy tale. It was made up by basically elite families from the East and from Rome who were trying to basically build a new King of Kings empire from the Roman Republic. And the first attempt was with Caesar and Cleopatra. That failed because Caesar was assassinated, and Rome wouldn't accept Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt, as their empress. They tried again. with Vespasian and his son Titus. That didn't work either. Titus was a pretty good emperor, but he only ruled for about 10 years, and the Roman populace still wouldn't accept Berenice, the granddaughter of Herod the Great, as their queen, their empress. The whole thing went underground for a while until Constantine came along, another Flavian related to Vespasian, who, incidentally, if you know anything about Josephus, Flavius Josephus, was the historian of their conquest in Judea. You've heard about Masada, you've heard about the destruction of the Second Temple. That was done by Vespasian and his son Titus, and was chronicled, one of the best recorded histories after perhaps the Peloponnesian War by Thucydides, was Flavius Josephus' account of the Jewish wars. Interestingly enough, he was supposedly one of the leaders of the Jews who happened to escape suicide pact and suddenly became the confidant and personal chronicler of the emperor. Now that was no coincidence, folks. It was all part of a plan. And it wasn't necessarily a bad plan. What they wanted to do, they liked how devout the Hebrews were, the Jews were, about their religion. And they thought, wow, if we can make people that devout worshipers of the emperor or the power of Rome, that would be maybe a more stable government than we've had in the past. And that was basically the genesis of the Catholic Church. And it was built upon pagan roots. Absolutely. That's why the Catholic Church has angels and saints. And why they have a Trinity. Okay? That's not monotheism, folks. That's polytheism. But trying to convey the idea of a first creator and a lineage, for better or worse, and that actually is the way it works. The lineage of souls is not sexual. And it didn't used to be, but it now is, because we have sex as an interesting feature of chosen species. My other episodes on the truth about cats and dogs go into that in detail, so I'm not going to tell you much about sex today. At any rate, the good news is that we're done with this. We've actually been in the middle of being done for a long time. Ever since whoever was inspired to tell the real Jesus story of kingdom of heaven, many rooms. This is talking about the multiverse. And what was taken out of that all was the idea that it needed to be done through personal effort, through karma and reincarnation, and that you don't get to this kingdom, or you don't get to the best kingdom, you don't get to stay there until you reach a certain level. Otherwise, you just kind of keep recycling, and people got tired of the whole thing of, well, reincarnation over and over and over again. Where can I escape from this? And the truth is that there has been sort of an escape while the experiment was going on. Because if you know anything about experiments, okay, we're trying to experiment to build a better God. But we're going to build a lot of other little g gods and goddesses during the experiment. Well, we can't just go throw them willy-nilly out into the rest of this testing universe, Lucifer's universe, until we're sure that the experiment worked. Because if it didn't work, we might have to destroy the laboratory, wipe everything out, destroy all the samples, because this was a bad idea. This was a virus, a spiritual cancer, if you will. And that's basically what's been happening. That's what the adversary's role in this has been. And in order for it to not be like a win-lose situation, it's done with periodicities. The adversary has a certain amount of time after a new Messiah line is established, 12 generations, to wipe that line out, to de-anoint that line with sin and misdeeds, or for that line to produce a capital M Messiah. During that time, it can produce many little m Messiahs of various different things, of art, music, science, literature, government, etc. And, you know, some are well known, others never even get mentioned, but actually had quite a bit of influence on those things. And if you know much about the history of science, the history of language, thought, culture, art, music, you will know that it's not just the big names that ended up being the most influential. Some lesser names actually had a much bigger influence. I'll give you a good example of that in the music field, which I'm pretty well up on. Everybody has heard probably of Bach, Mozart, Beethoven. But actually, if you go to the periods in which they were operating, in the Baroque period, I would strongly argue that Telemann was a more influential composer. Nobody knows him. There were some other less well-known composers who were kind of ahead of their time. Jan Dismas Zelenka is one of them. Franz von Weber was another one. Not well known except to people who love classical music. In Mozart's time, Haydn actually was far, far, far more influential than Mozart. And even Mozart worshipped him as a Messiah. In Beethoven's time, Schubert was probably the most creative and influential composer. And then shortly after Beethoven, a guy named Hector Berlioz, a Frenchman, was incredibly influential to, kick off the Romantic era. And you don't know about these guys. And there's many, many more that aren't even, are even less known. And that goes for all of human history. It's not about how materially successful or famous you are that determines if you're having a successful Messiah life. In fact, that is more often a sign that you failed, that you have sold out, that you've succumbed to the temptation of the adversary, and you become overly materialistic and dogmatic in your art or whatever you're doing. It's become a religion for you instead of your own personal salvation, if you will. And I think anybody who calls themselves a creator nowadays on the internet can relate to that. There is an incredible amount of pressure to get likes, shares, and subscribes, and donations. Oh, follow me on Patreon. Give me a coffee link. Okay, and yeah, people got to make a living, right? And sad thing is, once people start getting sponsors, they start letting the sponsors wiggle them. Absolutely. I don't care whose podcast or website or whatever you can name that's popular, they have succumbed to the beast. They have given in to peer pressure. They have given in to market pressure. and they change their message to conform to what is going to make them materially more popular, more famous, more rich. That's natural. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if you go too far down that rat hole, you may have blown one of your Messiah missions, one of your chances to show what you're made of in Lucifer's universe of testing. Because you've exposed a weakness, a vulnerability. If you can be corrupted, if you can be co-opted by the pressures of the adversary, which are many, the temptations of the adversary, that shows that you got more work to do. If you are having a Messiah mission and you have some particular gift, maybe paranormal abilities, telekinesis, telepathy, remote viewing, whatever, clairvoyance, all of these things are just that, a gift. You're being given it as a test in this universe. How you use it, what you do with it, determines how you did on the test. If you abuse those powers, even for good, what you consider good, you could be failing in your mission. Because it's not about this world. This physical universe is the testing place. It's to see where you belong in the rooms of the kingdom. Lately I've been referring to it as not the kingdom, but the heavenly hotel, because that's really more what it's like. It's like this big bunch of universes, and somewhere up near the top floor are the places where the senior creators have staked out their rooms or their floors, and they deal with souls that are very advanced, that have gotten to the highest levels of consciousness, the God levels of consciousness, and are basically running their own room, managing their own room. And then you've got the rooms below that of lower level gods who are still learning, still in training, maybe not doing such a great job. And then there's the underground levels of this heavenly hotel, where you've got some really dark gods and goddesses who are very authoritarian. They run their place like Xi Jinping runs China, trying to control everything, trying to micromanage everything, whacking anybody that gets in their way, and fearing anybody that gives them good advice because, oh, that person knows more than me, whack. And that's what Hitler did. That's what Stalin did. That's what Xi Jinping is doing to China. And anybody that knows what's going on in China right now knows that that place is absolutely falling apart at the seams. And I would not be surprised if millions, tens of millions, even hundreds of millions of Chinese die because of what the Chinese Communist Party, and particularly Xi Jinping, has done to that country. Nobody wants to invest anymore. Nobody trusts it anymore because Xi Jinping is going full on Mao, figuring the only way he can maintain power is with more communism. Let's get back to basics. Let's have another cultural revolution. Let's have another patriotic war. Dark stuff that might be coming. And, that's all part of this game. It's not supposed to be easy. And it's never going to get easier. In this universe, this is a universe of testing. If you don't like it here, don't come back. Become an NPC in some hive mind universe, and you can live in their reality. Many people think right now that they can create. I can create my own reality. Anything I can think, I can make, because I believe in the law of attraction. How many people do you know like that? Well, there's a part truth in that. They are maybe sensing that they might at some point have that ability. In fact, every soul is in the process of building their own private universe. This is how we can accomplish great things in the presence of free will. If you don't fit within the framework of the experiment you're in, this Gaia experiment on planet Earth in the human species, well, you just go play outside of it for a while. This is called the Mandela effect. And everybody's experienced it, these moments where you just kind of blank out. Wow, I was driving on the freeway and all of a sudden I became conscious again, and I don't know where the last few minutes went, and I'm amazed that I didn't get in an accident. That's the Mandela effect. You probably did get in an accident in some universe, and maybe not this universe, because that accident was not allowed, because it would have mucked up some other bunch of plans that were going on. And that's happening more and more now as we get closer to the singularity. The singularity of the completion of the Messiah's life, not the beginning. So Christmas is funny enough, began as a day of endings. It's the end of the year. The Saturnalia, which it was based on mostly, is a year-end celebration. And the beginning is celebrated in springtime. That's when the new God is born. And this is embedded in all Messianic traditions. It's part of this whole game that we set up with the constellations and the movement of the sun and the moon. Now, one of the interesting things, I guess I'll finish up with this because I think I've just about exhausted the topic. Some of you will know that the 5 more minutes. The year divided into 12 months doesn't quite come out right, and doesn't exactly line up with the lunar calendar. You have to have, there are about 28 days in a lunar cycle, something like that, and the average month has 30 days or something like that. And that's always puzzled people, and cultures have actually in the past sometimes had calendars that had 13 months and tried to line up with more with the lunar cycle than with the solar cycle. And in fact, these things have been changing, and that's why we have a Julian calendar and a Gregorian calendar, and et cetera, et cetera. Before that, they had other calendars. Other people still track other calendars, so it's not a fixed thing. Well, it's going to get fixed, because essentially what's going to herald the completion of this cycle is the adjustment of the system to match its perfect state. That's how we're going to know that this human experiment is done. Now, it's not going to happen right away, but it's going to happen. It's already in the process. This is how we're going to know that what's happened within humanity to generate the human Messiah is spreading to other parts of this experiment. The solar system is going to reorient itself in a way that is consistent with the mystical idea of perfection. Lunar perfection, 13 months equal months. or 12 equal months, and the moon is going to slow down or something like that. I'm not sure which way it's going to happen, but there's changes happening. There's changes happening to the rotation speed of the Earth. There's changes happening to the moon. And let me tell you that if they wanted to, there are powers that could change things like that, just like that. And now, that would probably be pretty catastrophic for the folks living on this planet. So, if there is a plan to do that at some time in the future, I would hope that the powers that are working on that plan will get everybody off first, move them to another planet, colonize other planets, create space colonies, build a Dyson sphere, whatever it takes to do. And I don't know exactly what their plans are, but I know they're working on them. So I wouldn't worry too much. Humanity is going to continue as a soul vehicle. Souls are going to continue to experience reincarnation. They're going to continue to face the challenges and the joys of karma. And they're going to continue celebrating Christmas in their own way, or Hanukkah, or Diwali, or whatever you call your celebration of the newborn God, the new Son. And I guess that's a good place to leave it. Let's let other people believe what they want to believe. I guarantee if their beliefs are out there, if they're cognitively dissonant enough, they will have to open their eyes and stop believing that nonsense. That's what awakening is. It's not just, I got up in the morning and opened my eyes, I'm woke now. No, it takes many, 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 many cycles of awakening. Many days, many months, many years, many lives to fully awaken to absolute full consciousness. 12th level consciousness is full God consciousness. That's when you get to be, up in the top floors with the other senior creators. Working on the big experiments, working on monitoring what's going on, trying to make sure nobody games the system. Till you get there, wherever you are is probably going to be pretty good. Not everybody's cut out to be a senior creator. It's not the funnest job in the multiverse. And everybody participates in reincarnation and karma, and it's not a bad thing. A lot of times you get to just choose a vacation life. And let me tell you, after this one, I'm looking forward to some vacation lives. I've already got them all planned out. Because I know, without a doubt, that I have earned my own universe of creation. With what I've learned, what I've gone through in my whole life actually, but the last 5-6 years especially. And I'm trying to share that with you. Not because I'm trying to start a new religion, not because I'm trying to become a guru, not because I want to get lectures and subscribes, because I'm hoping that it will help others have an easier path through whatever their challenges are if they are facing a Messiah mission, a Messiah incarnation. They are becoming a God for the first time, or maybe multiple times. I know that I have been a God before, not capital G God, but one of the little ones, one of the ones that actually was here exploring this newly terraformed world. I don't know what my name was. I think some people have called my character Zeus. Well, the root of Zeus is Deus Pater, so God the Father. I guess I have been God before, or at least the human God. I was there. I was the one who got frisky with the natives and was basically cavorting with everything in sight, creating all these lovely therianthropic creatures that then sort of became the elite class of that era. Yeah, that was back before the pyramids. These were the characters that were inscribed in stone, that were memorized in cave paintings. I was part of that, and I wasn't liked for that. I was the son of the leader of this expedition to basically colonize this new world and make some use of it. Mine resources, whatever. I don't know exactly what they were up to. I was the leader of it at one point. All I remember of that life is a childhood moment, out cavorting around with the animals and taking on the shape of ones that I thought would be fun to play with. And childish games became sexual games. And I impregnated lionesses. I impregnated sheep. Bulls. Not bulls, heifers. I don't swing that way. I have been female once. I was once a female kind of bear-like thing. I didn't like that much, so I pretty much always clung to my maleness. Identity preference. At any rate, I kind of see this thing from a different point of view than many of you, and you may think that that's kind of crazy. But I have absolutely no doubt that everything I'm telling you on my channel is gospel truth. And if it isn't, if I find something that doesn't fit, and I do a lot of research because that's my nature. I've got a scientific mind, an inquiring mind. If I find something that doesn't fit, I do more research until I see, oh, all of a sudden it'll come to me. That's what happened there. And so a lot of the things that I haven't experienced directly through past life recollections seem to come back to me through, I don't know what it is, divine revelation or something like that. Same sort of thing that other people have described who have been heralded as prophets or as great teachers or as spiritual leaders. I don't want to be that, though. It's not necessary, and I'm telling you why, because we don't need them anymore. Use them if they work for you. It's like a drug, really. Religion is like a drug. If it's useful for you, if it helps you get through the tough times, hey, go ahead and use it. Just be careful that there are side effects. They can become addictive. They can be delusional. They can make you distance yourself from the reality of your current incarnation. And that is generally a bad thing if you do it as a habit. And I think, anybody who has tried psychedelics or any kind of a mind-altering drug knows that they can be habit-forming. And there are many people who are becoming habitual users of even the least desirable psychedelics like ayahuasca. And that's not a healthy thing. Why? Because it's a two-way street. When you open up the pineal gland, you're not just letting in the good guys, you're letting in a whole Pandora's box of possible influences from all over the multiverse. And you have no idea whether those influences are on your side or not. And believe me, the most demonic ones, the most evil ones, are going to masquerade as your best buddy. They're going to try to suck you into their cult, into their hive mind. And this is why I preach so strongly against going along with the oneness cult. We are not all one. We are all individual quanta of consciousness. born at different times with different natures, because each soul is born as a non-player character. You're pulled out of a hat, out of the Borg hive mind, and tacked onto a particular role. And the programming of that role is kind of your starting point for you as a soul. And depending on what you do with it, you might get another chance, or you might just decide, you know what, I want to go back to source. Take me back, Mr. Wizard, I don't like this place. And that's your choice. If you go on and have another life, you'll get some kind of an afterlife experience based upon your karma and the accepting karma of the spiritual universe that you attend. And they will help you plan another life, or maybe they will say, you know what, I want you to stay here and be one of our angels, or archivists, or whatever job descriptions they give. And that may be a good thing, it may be a bad thing. It depends on you and it depends on them. At any rate, my wife is telling me that it's time to end this podcast, so switch back so I can see you. Till next time, this is the Omnist Hour with Rob Trump, and happy karma.